OpenAI is worth $300 billion. Sam Altman, its CEO, could soon be one of the richest people on Earth. And 10 years ago, both of those things were explicitly forbidden. The company was founded as a nonprofit. No shareholder returns, no equity for the people running it, no single entity controlling the most powerful technology in history. The original language was unambiguous. Their goal was to advance artificial intelligence unconstrained by a need to generate financial return, to build value for everyone, rather than shareholders. They meant it. The people in that room in 2015 meant every word. It took 1 decade, one reasonable decision at a time. This is the story of how a company built its own firewall, and then, facing the physics of what it was trying to build, dismantled that firewall piece by piece, believing each piece could be spared. The safety nonprofit became a commercial giant. The board designed to say no to money failed its first real test in 5 days, and the mission that was written in plain language, in a public charter, slowly became something else. The contradiction was there from the beginning. Almost no one read the fine print. December 2015. A specific group of people, driven by a specific fear. Elon Musk had been watching Google. In 2014, Google acquired DeepMind, a British AI research lab with one of the best teams in the world, for around $500 million. To Musk, this was not just a business deal, it was a civilization-level risk. The world's most powerful data company, now with the world's best AI researchers, racing toward artificial general intelligence with shareholders to satisfy. He believed the only answer was a rival lab, one that was structurally incapable of being captured by profit motives. Sam Altman, then running Y Combinator, agreed. So did Reid Hoffman, Peter Thiel, Greg Brockman. In December 2015, they announced OpenAI, a non-profit AI research company co-chaired by Altman and Musk, backed by a committed $1 billion. The launch document read like a manifesto. Researchers would be encouraged to publish their work. Any patents would be shared with the world. The company would operate free of commercial pressures and the pursuit of money. To lead the research, they recruited Ilya Sutskever, a 29-year-old who had co-invented one of the most important neural network models of the decade while at Google Brain. They offered him what Google could not: a lab with no profit motive, no pressure to ship a product, and a mission he believed in. He took the job. What followed was exactly what was promised: small teams, open research, serious people working on a serious problem. By 2018, they had published the OpenAI Charter, a formal document that codified the mission. It included something called the Stop and Assist Pledge. If another AI lab looked like it was close to building safe AGI before OpenAI, OpenAI would stop competing and help them instead. They were building a company designed to voluntarily lose, because winning the wrong way was the thing they feared most. But that idealism ran into physics. To build a frontier AI model, you do not just need smart researchers. You need compute, enormous amounts of computing power, running for months at a time, at costs that dwarf what any normal research nonprofit can sustain. By 2018 and 2019, OpenAI was discovering what this really meant. They trained a model called GPT-2, a language model capable enough that OpenAI initially chose not to release it publicly, calling it too dangerous for general access. The restraint was admirable, but it also revealed a tension. They were now building things powerful enough to worry about, and expensive enough that a nonprofit running on donations could not keep pace with what was coming. Elon Musk had seen it coming. In 2018, he resigned from the board, citing a conflict with his work at Tesla. He later said he had lost confidence in the company's direction. He was gone before the first major structural compromise. That compromise arrived in 2019. OpenAI created what it called a capped profit structure, a for-profit limited liability company sitting underneath the nonprofit. Investors could now participate, but their returns would be capped at 100 times their original investment. Anything beyond that would go back to the nonprofit's mission. The nonprofit itself would retain control of the whole structure, 100 times return. This was framed as a responsible constraint. And at the valuations of 2019, it was easy to accept. Nobody expected to make 100 times their money on a research lab. But a cap is still a number, and numbers change meaning at different valuations. The first investor to step through that new door was Microsoft. In 2019, Microsoft invested $1 billion in OpenAI. The deal came with a specific structure. Microsoft would be OpenAI's exclusive cloud provider. All of OpenAI's computing would run on Azure. In exchange, Microsoft got an equity stake in the capped profit entity, returns subject to the 100 times cap, with the nonprofit retaining control above everything. On paper, the nonprofit still controlled it all. On paper, the mission was intact. But something had changed. Microsoft now had a financial stake in OpenAI's success. Its stock price, its product roadmap, its quarterly earnings calls, all of them now referenced what OpenAI built. Microsoft had a reason to want OpenAI to move fast, ship products, grow revenue, become valuable. The nonprofit could override those incentives, in theory. In January 2023, Microsoft invested again, $10 billion more, bringing its total commitment to over $13 billion. The Azure relationship had grown from a partnership into something structural. Microsoft was integrating GPT into Bing, into Office, into Windows. Not just an investor, a dependent. And with the 2023 deal came a revised structure. Microsoft would receive roughly 49% of profits until it recouped its investment. The nonprofit would receive its share after investors were paid. The mission was still written in the charter, but the cash flow now had an order, a priority stack, a fine print. Every clause had been reviewed by lawyers. Every provision was legally sound. Each looked reasonable in isolation. This is how it works, not one dramatic betrayal. A series of sensible arrangements, each of which makes sense until you read them all at once. Then ChatGPT launched, November 30th, 2022. A product anyone could use that felt genuinely different from anything before it. Within 2 months, it had 100 million users, the fastest adoption of any consumer product in recorded history at the time. Nothing had reached 100 million users that quickly. Not Instagram, not TikTok. Microsoft moved fast. In January 2023, it announced $10 billion more and a deep integration of GPT into Bing, Office, and Windows. The valuation, which had been essentially theoretical for years, suddenly had a real number. OpenAI went from $29 billion early in 2023 to $90 billion by late 2023. The mission seemed fine. It always seems fine during the boom. But behind the numbers, there was a problem. In 2024, OpenAI earned approximately $4 billion in revenue and lost approximately $5 billion. It was spending more than it earned, by a significant margin. Training the newest models cost hundreds of millions of dollars each. The compute bill kept climbing. The safety team was fighting for compute time against the product team. The product team had revenue numbers. The revenue numbers were what kept everything running. The nonprofit structure that was built to protect the mission was now governing a machine that burned billions annually just to stay competitive. And the logic of the machine had a simple answer to that. Raise more money. Just a little more. Enough to get to the next model. Enough to stay in the race. The question was what the next round would cost. Not in dollars. In what they would have to give up. They found out in November 2023. Sam Altman had been pushing hard. A developer conference, new products. Talk of a secondary share sale valuing the company at $86 billion. Behind the scenes, there had been a conflict. In October 2023, Altman had reportedly pushed to remove Helen Toner, an independent board member, a Georgetown researcher on AI safety, because she had co-authored a paper that implicitly criticized OpenAI's approach to safety. The board had not removed her. Instead, they began to question whether Altman was being fully candid with them. On the evening of November 16, 2023, Ilya Sutskever, co-founder, chief scientist, one of the most respected AI researchers on Earth, sent Altman a text message. He asked him to join a board video call at noon the next day. Altman thought it was routine. On Friday, November 17th, at noon Pacific time, Sam Altman joined a Google Meet. The board told him he was fired, effective immediately. The official statement said the board had concluded he was not consistently candid in his communications with them, and that it no longer had confidence in his ability to lead OpenAI. Mira Murati, the CTO, was named interim CEO. Greg Brockman, co-founder and president, learned he had been removed as board chair. He resigned instead. Satya Nadella, Microsoft's CEO, learned about the firing from the news. The board had not told their largest investor. He was, by multiple accounts, furious. Over the weekend, nearly 800 OpenAI employees signed a letter demanding Altman's return and the board's resignation. Among those signatures was one that stood out. Ilya Sutskever, the man who had orchestrated the firing, posted publicly, "I deeply regret my participation in the board's actions. I never intended to harm OpenAI. I love everything we have built together, and I will do everything I can to reunite the company." Microsoft then made the math explicit. It offered to hire Altman and the entire OpenAI research team, effectively proposing to absorb OpenAI's people and work into Microsoft itself. The single outcome the nonprofit structure had been designed to prevent. By November 21st, Altman was back as CEO. The board was reconstituted. Helen Toner was gone. The safety researcher whose paper had sparked the crisis was no longer on the board. In her place, Bret Taylor, former co-CEO of Salesforce, Larry Summers, former Treasury Secretary and Goldman Sachs board member. The nonprofit board had tried to fire Sam Altman to protect the mission. It lasted 5 days, and when it was over, the people who had voted for the mission were gone. The people who understood capital markets were in. The new board looked different from the old one. Bret Taylor had built and sold companies. Larry Summers had run the U.S. Treasury and sat on the Goldman Sachs board. Adam D'Angelo of Quora stayed as the lone holdover. Not a single safety researcher remained on the governing board of the world's most powerful AI lab. The company moved forward. In May 2024, Ilya Sutskever quietly left OpenAI. After nearly a decade, he said the company's trajectory had been nothing short of miraculous and wished them well. 3 days later, Jan Leeke resigned. Leeke had run OpenAI's super alignment team, the group specifically tasked with figuring out how to make powerful AI systems safe before they become uncontrollable. His departure was not quiet. In a series of public posts, Leeke wrote that he had been disagreeing with OpenAI leadership about the company's core priorities for quite some time, that his team had been sailing against the wind. And in language that was hard to misread, safety culture and processes have taken a back seat to shiny products. The super alignment team, which had been promised 20% of OpenAI's computing resources, was dissolved shortly after he left. In the space of 6 months, OpenAI had lost its chief scientist and the head of its safety division. Then came the money. On October 2nd, 2024, OpenAI closed a $6.6 billion round, the largest venture capital fundraise in recorded history at that moment, at a valuation of $157 billion. The lead investor was Thrive Capital. The terms included a provision. If OpenAI did not convert to a for-profit structure within 2 years, the investment would revert to debt. Investors were not buying a mission. They were buying an option on a conversion. In December 2024, OpenAI proposed to formalize that conversion. The operating company would become a Delaware public benefit corporation. The nonprofit would step back from direct governance, receiving a large equity stake instead of control. The 100 times return cap from 2019, the constraint that had defined the structure, would be removed entirely. By March 2025, SoftBank led a $40 billion round at $300 billion. The backlash was significant. Geoffrey Hinton, the Nobel laureate who helped invent deep learning itself, signed a public letter urging state attorneys general to block the conversion. On May 5, 2025, OpenAI pulled back. The nonprofit would retain formal control, but the subsidiary would still become a public benefit corporation with ordinary shares and no cap on returns. The 100 times cap was gone. The oversight language remained, and then, around this same period, Bloomberg reported that OpenAI's board had been discussing giving Sam Altman an equity stake of roughly 7%. At a $157 billion valuation, 7% is approximately $10 billion. Altman denied the specific figure, but according to reporting, he has also said that he wishes he had taken equity in OpenAI earlier. The man who ran the nonprofit The man who had been chair without equity, who had been the face of the mission, appears to wish he had gotten paid. It is tempting to call this a failure, but OpenAI is not a failure. It may be the most commercially successful AI company in history. The nonprofit technically still controls it. The mission language is still in the charter. The people who believed in the original version of the mission are simply not there. Elon Musk left in 2018. The safety board tried to enforce the mission in 2023 and lasted 5 days before the market overruled them. Ilya Sutskever, who co-founded the company and then tried to fire its CEO to protect the nonprofit's mandate, left in 2024. Jan Leike, who ran the team built to ensure the mission was technically achievable, resigned 3 days later and said what he had seen. What remains is the structure. A nonprofit that governs a $300 billion company with uncapped investor returns. A CEO who has said publicly he wishes he owned a piece of it, and products that have changed how the world works. It is also tempting to say this proves that a safety-first AI company is impossible. But that is not quite right either, because every step of this story, someone made a choice. Not a forced choice, a choice. Raise the money, sign the deal, reconstitute the board, remove the cap, each one reasonable, each one survivable, all of them together pointing somewhere. In 2015, they wrote it in plain language. Their goal was to advance artificial intelligence unconstrained by a need to generate financial return. The constraint came anyway, one reasonable decision at a time. The question is not whether anyone will read the next charter. The question is whether the charter matters when the machine it governs costs $40 billion a year to keep running.